The only person in Boston to take Cotton Mather seriously was a man by the name of Zabdiel Boylston, who had also read the Royal Society's publication. Zabdiel Boylston is also John Adams' grandfather. On June 26, 1721, Zabdiel decides to try a little experiment and inoculates his own 6-year-old son, along with several other people that he knows, and wants to see what results would happen. Keep in mind, he had never seen it performed before himself. And this experiment changed colonial medicine because it proved successful and brought other people, just as in London, other people now wanted to participate. And on July 30th, like 2 weeks later, Boylston inoculates his oldest son. Following this, a smallpox outbreak in Boston provided many patients, but not all of them could be convinced to participate in inoculation. Many of them had problems with how God would view it. But Zabdiel inoculated 286 people, and only 5 died. And he records in his book that those that died also had other medical issues as well. These statistics are amazing when you think that overall in Boston that year, 5,759 people contracted smallpox, and 844 of them died. Due to the success of inoculation in saving lives, and after publication of a book of notes, Boylston became very busy. And despite how busy he was and how famous he got, once the epidemic in Boston was over, he wanted to stop the practice of inoculation. Another interesting beginning was Cotton Mather had a slave who came from Africa, whose name was Onesimus, who had apparently been inoculated in Africa. When Cotton asked him if he had ever had smallpox, he lifted up his shirt arm and showed him scars on his arm, showing that they had been practicing inoculation in Africa before the colonists had ever even heard of it. Cotton also didn't really make friends by trying to push inoculation. Some Puritan Congregationalists of his made a crude grenade and threw it through his window on November 1st, 1721, but did not explode, thankfully. But this just shows how angry people were that they were tampering with God's idea of who should become sick and why they became sick. So there were many arguments between religious and non-religious, and some areas even created laws against the practice of inoculation, such as Boston, Charleston, South Carolina, and the entire state of Virginia. But some of the brightest minds at the time had themselves or their children inoculated, such as John Adams, Cotton Mather, who did it in secret, and Thomas Jefferson. And smallpox also played a huge role in the American Revolution. More people died in the American Revolution from smallpox than they did from actually fighting in the war. And the Americans very likely could have lost the war due to smallpox if George Washington hadn't decided to change his policies on letting the soldiers be inoculated. And finally, one of the greatest medical inventions of all time is the practice of vaccination, which is the insertion of a similar disease to cause resistance to another. In this case, the cowpox vaccine was used in place of smallpox. And this was discovered on May 14th, 1796 by Edward Jenner, who used cowpox matter to inoculate 8-year-old James Phillips, who was inoculated 2 months later with smallpox and did not catch smallpox at all. And this became the new method of how to rid the world of smallpox, and very less dangerously. So, thank you.
Time for just about 2 quick questions.
Just quick, are there any cases of people who died who were inoculated?
There are, but like I mentioned, he claims that they had other medical issues to go along with it, and some people just die anyway, but it's a very small percentage, because you don't get as severe of an infection when you're being inoculated than if you were to catch it naturally.
Why did Boylston decide to stop inoculation?
He was also very religious, and he knew that it was a great medical tool, and that's why he decided to practice it. But once there was no longer a need for it, he was like, well, I don't know how God feels about this, and kind of was like, I'm going to wait until it's needed.
Sort of pragmatic Puritan.